structure models where volatility and distributions play an important part, which are primarily differentiated based on volatility and distribution. Because in the earlier session, whatever the interest rate term structure models which we have discussed, whether it is with no drift or with the drift or wholly, where time dependency drift, or Vasisec, where we were talking about mean reversion in the drift. So these models, they were all based on differences with respect to the drift. But if we see in all these models, the volatility was more or less similar. Like the volatility was generally sigma dw kind of a form, where dw was a normally distributed random variable, which means here the distribution is also constant across. The volatility sigma is a single constant one across. So most of the models that we have looked at in the drift chapter were primarily having a constant sigma dw kind of a behavior. Though overall, when we were incorporating them along with the drift, we were seeing that overall volatility of the interest rates is coming down as the time is passing. Otherwise, as we were seeing in sigma dw kind of a scenario, they were more or less constant across. But now in this chapter, whatever the models that we are going to deal with, right, we are going to deal with again a kind of models called Cox, Ingersoll, Ross model, or the basic time dependent volatility model. We'll talk about time dependent volatility model. We'll look at Cox, Ingersoll, Ross model. We'll talk about log normal model. This is what is the distribution is changing, whereas the drift based model, the focus was more on normal distribution itself, whereas here we are changing to the models which are based on log normal kind of a distribution, a Cox, Ingersoll, Ross model. So these kind of models across the space, they have some differences with respect to the volatility. They don't assume constant volatility across the period. There are some changes in the volatility. Probably they may be in combination with the drift also, or even without the drift, but our focus is primarily the change with respect to the volatility. So the first of that category models is called as a time dependent volatility model, which probably if we see, this is okay, lambda of t, which means time dependent drift is there. The change in the interest rate over a short period of time dt is a factor of time dependent drift, which means the lambdas could be different for each of the periods, which was similar to our wholly model earlier. But the key difference being, in our wholly model, we were just putting sigma dw, means the sigma was assumed to be constant for the entire period. But here in the time dependent volatility model, even the volatility is time dependent. The volatility also, I would be doing a modeling of the term structure. That is how this is becoming slightly more flexible compared to the wholly model. And generally, this sigma t, we can have various models or various mechanisms to come out with this sigma t, but the more time decaying version of sigma t, people take it as sigma